Breakdown, predictions, UFC 308, let's go. Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. Victor Hugo has some decent wrestling takedown defense. This is a close fight overall. Let me just start by saying that. Victor Hugo, some decent wrestling takedown defense in his last fight. Farid Basharat against Lepelis was able to take him down, who actually has some good takedown defense himself. Basharat is not the kind of fighter that just uses brute force or just double legs and just takes you down. And, you know, he has some skill in his grappling and his wrestling. He goes from a single leg to a double leg, gets his wrist locked up first, takes you down, breaks you down, holds you down, controls you down. You know what I mean? He just takes you down. I think he'll take down Victor Hugo. It just comes down to if Victor Hugo's level of wrestling is up to the par with Farid Basharat. Like, he can stuff some takedown. He has some good wrestling takedown defense. But Basharat, on the other hand, like, I think he might be the next level above from Victor Hugo. Victor Hugo is not the highest level fighter, but he is very good. I will say he is very good. I think Farid is just a little bit better of a grappler than Victor Hugo. And I do believe Farid is undefeated. And I think in these Saudi Arabia cards, I think the matchmakers specifically do their own film breakdown, pick the fights that they think the Dagestanis will win, and put them in those fights. Today, maybe not on this card as much, but I think this is one of those fights where they know that he's going to be able to beat Victor Hugo. Moving on. The pick is Farid Basharat, if you hadn't extracted that information earlier. Bruno Silva versus Ismail Naurdiev. Ismail Naurdiev is coming back to the UFC after his first stint, and right now he's 1-2 in his last 3 fights. And those 3 fights did not happen in the UFC, they happened in Brave FC. In Brave FC, his last fight he won, and the 2 before that he lost to people without Wikipedia pages, which is quite concerning. Ismail he has changed his game. I've seen a little bit of his more recent stuff, and he's changed his game a little bit from his first stint in the UFC. He's more of a wrestling takedown, ground and pound type of fighter, which would bode well in a fight against Bruno Silva, who was controlled by Chris Weidman in his last fight, where he got eye poked and the fight finished because of eye pokes. Bruno Silva was losing that fight in my opinion. He was losing that fight because of the eye pokes, but you know what I mean, like, he has shown that he can be controlled. I don't know why I'm being so negative towards Bruno Silva right now. I think he's going to win this fight. I think his striking is a little bit better than Ismail Naurdiev's. Let's just say Ismail. Anyway, his striking, I think he has some power to his striking, some crispness to his striking. I think he'll be able to piece up Ismail, break him down, piece him up. Could finish him. He has some power, has some clean striking. He's the better kickboxer of the 2 by far. And I don't think he'll finish him though, but I do think he'll be 29-28 scorecard. I do think Ismail will lose later on. I don't think Bruno Silva will be able to threaten anything off his back, however. And overall, I do think Bruno Silva just wins the fight. That's just how it goes sometimes. He's just going to win. The pick is Bruno Silva. Kenny Nzechumwu versus Chris Barnett. Chris Barnett right now is on a short late replacement. No, not a late replacement, but Chris Barnett, I swear to God, just a few weeks ago was dealing with a hurricane, his house getting wrecked. I'm pretty sure the training camp wasn't the biggest training camp he's ever had, or the most in-depth potentially. Kenny Nzechumwu's coming off a loss to Ovince St. Preux. He was supposed to fight nobody actually. Chris Barnett was supposed to fight Justin Tafa before this fight, and that fight got taken off the card because or was it Junior Tafa? It was one of the Tafas. They both fought recently. They're the same fighter, really. They're both really shit at fighting, and they're fat and are a disgrace to the sport. Anyway, Chris Barnett opened as a massive underdog against one of the Tafa bros, either of the Tafa bros, and I was going to pick him to win this fight because I think he's a bit wild on the feet. I think he has some skill to him despite his weight and physique would lead you to believe, something the Tafa bros don't have. However, in this case, Kenny Nzechumwu is a more skillful fighter than the Tafa bros are. By a significant margin, I would say so as well. I think he will be able to check some of the kicks that Chris Barnett throws. I do think he has some power and enough technique to mitigate the amount of spinning attacks that Chris Barnett would do to catch him off guard in just a normal mono man-to-man fight, which is what I'm expecting this to be. I'm not expecting Chris Barnett to be able to just get into striking range with Kenny Nzechumwu and just piece him up or land some heavy blows. I'm sure here or there he could land something. I do think he's a pretty good underdog considering the size of the underdog that he is and the size of his body. I think Kenny Nzechumwu will win though. It is quite concerning for him considering this could be his last fight in the UFC. The UFC just let go of Ovince St. Preux, and Kenny Nzechumwu is one of those fighters where if you lose to Ovince St. Preux, you might get cut. You know what I mean? I think that's why he's moving up a weight division. That's the last resort that fighters come to. You know, what I mean? Fighters just decide at one point in their career, okay, I'm old, I'm washed, there's nothing happening here. I'm not getting to the title. I just lost to a guy that will never be champion and has just been cut from the UFC himself. So I'll move up a weight division, see what can happen. Let's see if I can get some more paychecks before they eventually realize that I bring nothing of value to this sport. I'm not saying Nzechumwu brings nothing of value, but I mean, that Oversay proof fight was eye-opening, to say the least. It killed my parlay, and that's why I'm still pissed off right now. Anyway, I think Nzechumwu is good enough to beat Chris Barnett, who is just another fat heavyweight that can kind of like get his legs above his waist, I guess. That's like the thing with Chris Barnett, isn't he? He's just a fatty with like a body kick. Anyway, the pick will be Nzechumwu. Moving on, Fakretdinov versus Carlos Leal. Late replacement, Ruziboyev was supposed to fight Rinat before this fight got made. Carlos Leal, a good kickboxer, a good striker. Fakretdinov, a worse kickboxer, a worse striker than Leal is. But on the other hand, he's the far, far more superior wrestler. And if anything, we have seen that Rinat can mix in his takedowns with his striking really, really well, to the point where he can catch his opponents off guard with power shots, almost finish them, maybe finish them every here or there. He did finish Kevin Lee with a strike. I think Kevin Lee was worried about the wrestling because Rinat is a big dude in the division. This is the welterweight division. And Rinat was able to completely dominate Bryan Battle by taking him down. And Bryan Battle is honestly a fighter that could be looking at the top 15 if he wins his next fight against Randy Brown. So he's clearly, Rinat I think is top 15 level himself. Leal I'm not so sure about. I think Leal is the better striker. I think Rinat would be crazy to just strike with him. That wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. I think Rinat's going to wrestle him, take him down, control him, and I think he'll eventually find a submission on the ground on Carlos Leal in the second or the third round. It could be the first round as well, because Rinat is a big dude. If I haven't mentioned it already, like, he is massive for that division. He was towering over, I don't know if it was towering, but he just looked bigger than, he looked more menacing than Kevin Lee, because at that point Kevin Lee was just like a fish in a barrel, with Rinat being a fisherman with a spear, you know what I mean? Like, there's only one where that fight was going to go, and that's with a spear through Kevin Lee's head. Anyway, the pick is going to be Rinat Fakretdinov. Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. I do have fights with money on the line, by the way, so I am putting money where my mouth is, like I always say. Bruno Ferreira versus Abus Magomedov. Both of them are strikers. Bruno Ferreira, I believe, has got most of his career wins in the first round and all of his losses in the first round. I think he's been out of the first round one time ever. Abus Magomedov is also a round one striker, finisher. He has ability to do that kind of stuff. Abus has been exposed somewhat for his gas tank. Bruno Ferreira, I think, while not been exposed, has not been tested into deep waters. I do think he would probably gas out, and that's why he goes so hard in the first and second round. Tough one to pick. I did put money on it. At the end of the day, it just came down to who was the underdog and who's paying out more money, and that was Bruno Ferreira. Abus Magomedov has the name Magomedov, but he is a good striker. He can wrestle, don't get me wrong, he can wrestle, but he was out-wrestled by, who's that guy? The Brazilian dude, you know what I mean? What's his name? He's top 5 now. He just beat Jared Cannonier. I'm just blanking on names right now. The pressure is getting to me of YouTube. But anyway, he controlled Abus Magomedov, took him down, controlled him, couldn't do nothing. Sean Strickland broke Abus Magomedov in the second round. I have been seeing some people say Abus will break Ferreira in the later rounds. He'll be able to conserve his gas tank, and then I'm not sure what the hell they're on about, to be honest. Abus Magomedov in the second round has been heaving for his life. From what I've seen in the past few fights that he's had that's actually made it to that point in the fight. I know he won one fight that went to the decision, but I don't think it'll happen here, especially since Bruno Ferreira is going to bring the pace, the pressure, the KO ability. Abus will trade with him. We're expecting a round 1 finish. I'm calling a round 1 finish. Bruno Ferreira is going to be the pick, and I have $50 on him, so there you go. That's the first bet of the night. There'll be more to come. Orolbai versus Mateusz Rebecki. Now, Orolbai has only had 2 fights, I believe, in the UFC, and in both fights he's looked like a beast. He has moved forward, threatened the wrestling, taken people down, controlled them, and is really close eyes together, as it turns out, while Rebecki has eyes that seem to be too low. A battle of the eyes, this one. Actually, Rebecki's eyes are too low, while Orolbai's are too high. That's my breakdown for the fight. Moving on. I'm just kidding. I do think Orolbai, I do have some notes here. Let me just read over them what I was just going to say. Orolbai, I do think Orolbai's wrestling will be the difference. I think Rebecki has some decent wrestling himself. I think Orolbai will be the superior wrestler here. I think he's the bigger dude in this fight, has more reach, is just a large individual. I think he's bigger than Rebecki, and Rebecki has a hairline that just shows that he's washed up. Don't know what it is about that hairline. You just look at that hairline and you just think, damn, this guy's washed. Nothing more to say here. It's something about the rest. I'm expecting the grappling to be a big factor in this fight. Orolbai, control Rebecki, maybe get a finish in the 3rd round. If not, decision is what I'm going to predict. That's going to be the pick. Orolbai is the pick. Not the most in-depth analysis, but I was running short on time, and this was a fight that I omitted the most amount of time for my research, so what you gonna do? I don't put any money on it, and neither should you. Geoff Neal versus Rafael dos Anjos. A tough fight to predict, to be honest, just because it's 3 rounds. Over a 5-round fight, I will pick Geoff Neal to destroy Rafael dos Anjos for show. For show, just like Vicente Luque did. I do think Geoff Neal has some decent wrestling takedown defense. I think he'll be able to stop the grappling of Rafael dos Anjos. But the thing with these fights is, in a 3-round fight, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to hold the other person down for 2 minutes for 2 separate rounds, and the judges might give you that fight. If you're active enough on the ground, obviously. Geoff Neal, I think he's the better striker of the two at this point in the game. Much more power, not much more power, to be honest. He's coming off 2 losses to Ian Gary and Rakhmonov, but I mean, it's Ian Gary and Rakhmonov, both those guys in the top, handily the top 10 in their divisions. Rafael dos Anjos, I think, would get destroyed by both of them as well. Dos Anjos, we saw what happened against, well, the thing is, against the Fiziev fight, Fiziev was able to stuff the takedowns. That was at 155. A small Dos Anjos couldn't take him down. Geoff Neal's a bigger dude. I think he'll be able to stuff the takedowns. I think his striking has enough power to, like, really sting Rafael dos Anjos. I think Rafael dos Anjos can catch him, maybe, but not really. I don't really see him catching him. I think Geoff Neal will keep this fight on the feet, outstrike Rafael dos Anjos, and just break him apart. I think Rafael dos Anjos is too old. A prime Dos Anjos I would actually pick to beat Geoff Neal, but at this stage of the game, he's old, he has a mustache, he has a pedo mustache. Not a pedo mustache. I don't know why I'm saying stuff about people's facial features, but he's just old, and I think he needs to retire. And if he loses here, I think there's no point in just milling around in the division. Just time to hang it up, Dos Anjos. Like, you know, like, what are you fighting for at this stage of the game? Like, this is turning into an intervention now. Like, why continue to put your family through all of this? I'm sure your kids would love to have you at home and just be with their dad for once in their life instead of just seeing him go off for 10 weeks, like 2 months at a time, 2 to 3 months at a time. Not never to be seen again until he gets finished and comes back. Like, you're 39, man. Just come on. You know what I mean? Like, just come on. It's time. Geoff Neal's the pick. Ebo Aslan versus Rafael Rafael. Ebo Aslan versus Rafael. Late replacement Rafael is. Ebo Aslan is majority a 1st round finisher. He has some cardio in his last fight against Turkalji. He was able to take it in the 3rd round and finish him off in the 3rd round, but Turkalji isn't the most high-level fighter on the planet, let's be honest here. Ain't doing too much in terms of the impressiveness of the win. But for some reason, Ebo is a underdog now, while Rafael, who is undefeated, I have noticed, by just looking at their records, while undefeated, I am not sure about the level of competition he's faced, because apparently, from what I'm seeing, he has gone from different organization to organization, never quite getting to the top of any organization, so it wasn't even like he was fighting the best guys outside the UFC, he was just fighting guys outside the UFC, and he's undefeated. Tough fight to predict. Rafael looks like he has some brutal finishing power, by the way, from what I'm seeing. A lot of 1st round finishes. Abo, kind of the same, a lot of power. I think it might be fireworks in this fight, but I think Abo has, if anything, shown me a little bit that he has some cardio against the Turkalji fighting, even though Turkalji is absolutely shit at fighting at this stage of the game. Flip a coin, honestly. Like, there's not too much to say here other than what I've just said. Abo has had 1 fight in the UFC. I think this might be Rafael's debut in the organization, unless he was on the Contender Series. I'm not too certain. Oh, I have to look it up now. Don't want to humiliate myself in mid-video. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong. Let's see what his last fight was, guys. Even though he's 34, on top of everything else, he's 34 years old. He's only now getting to the UFC, and I was right. There you go. I'm going to go with Ibo. Shara Putin Magomedov versus Armen Petrosyan. This is the fight that I think a lot of people are going to be really leaning towards Armen Petrosyan, and I would too if I wasn't just completely caught up by the fact that this is happening in a Middle Eastern country where any fight that's close will just go to the Dagestani. I do think Armen Petrosyan will be able to really annoy Shara in this fight. I think Shara has shown that he has some really good striking. He out-kickboxed Bruno Silva, which is quite impressive because Bruno Silva is very good as a kickboxer himself. Armen will be shooting takedowns to save his life, let's be honest here. It's just a matter of fact if he can take him down and do something real dominant with it, or if we're going to really see Shara's wrestling, like, you know, like, tested. I'm sure he's trained wrestling with his Dagestani brothers here for this fight. I'm sure he went up to, like, the top of a mountain to train for a couple of weeks, you know what I mean? Just get away, let his hair down, see what the life is like on the other side. I'm gonna go with Magomedov though. I think Armen Petrosyan is good, and I do think he could fraud check Shara here, but I just think Shara has just too much. Like, you gotta imagine, right? Some of these fighters will get better as their careers go on, and I think Shara is one of those situations where he's only allowed to be in the Middle East. If there's anything he's training, the fact that he knows ahead of time that he's fighting Armen Petrosyan, he will be training the wrestlings. It's not like these fighters just come into these training camps and just think, okay, I'll just do what I'm good at, just focus on that stuff, and that's it. They also work on their weaknesses, and I'm just kind of betting that Shara has worked on his weaknesses. I do think he's a way better striker than Armen Petrosyan. I do think he could even catch Armen in this fight. I think he's just so much better as a striker than Armen. I think Armen could take him down, but I think it'll be a lot of stalling, and anything that's close in these Dagestani fights, I think they'll just go to the Dagestanis. I'm going to go with Sharapudin Magomedov in this fight. Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. Not using MMA math here, but Lerone Murphy did beat Edson Barboza quite easily, while Dan Ige also beat Barboza, but really he lost that fight, so... Again, not using MMA math, but let's be honest here, this fight's going to be on the feet. I don't think this fight's going to be going too much to the wrestling. I think Dan Ige could threaten to take down here or there. I think Lerone Murphy, maybe he could go, just to put it in the back of Ige's mind, could try something as well, but I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting a on-the-feet affair. Dan Ige does have some wrestling ability though, so I'm going to give him that credit where it's due. I think Lerone Murphy just has the far better striking of the two, and I'm not saying far better as in like far better, but far better, you know what I mean? Like, it's quite clear who the better... You know, I think Lerone Murphy can throw in some leg kicks, weaken up Dan Ige. And if there's anything we've seen with Dan Ige, it's like some of the more technical strikers with a bit of power in their hands or in their body or whatever they can hit you with has always given Dan Ige some trouble here. I believe he took a... I mean, Calvin Kattar doesn't have the craziest KO power, but he did beat Dan Ige, pieced him up. Skillful fighter. Another fighter that was able to piece him up with the Korean Zombie. Dan Ige went into that fight as a favorite, got 49-46 in that fight. Korean Zombie, another one of those guys he could have wrestled with, could have taken him down. I mean, I don't know. Could he have? I don't know. He could have mixed in the grappling a bit more and, like, you know, controlled him on the ground if he took him down and all that stuff. But I don't think it's going to happen with Lerone Murphy. Lerone Murphy looked great against his fight against Edson Barboza. And Edson Barboza, even though he's old and his striking has gotten worse just because of age and the reaction timing and all that, Lerone Murphy still showed that he was far better than Edson Barboza on the... Not far, but far better than Edson Barboza. I think there is a gap. I think that Barboza is older and worse on the one than Dan Ige fought. But I think it's Lerone Murphy in it. Undefeated right now. Dan Ige's taken some losses. Dan Ige had a fight just recently, but he didn't go through a training camp, so it's not like he's fully in shape. But he did say he was in shape, so, you know, respect to him for taking his job seriously. A lot of people don't in this game. But yeah, at one point I did have Said Magomedov as part of my parlay, but now it's just Lerone Murphy and another person that we'll get into now. Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. This is a huge fight in the light heavyweight division. This is honestly the winner of this fight determines who Alex Pereira fights next for the light heavyweight championship. And in case you've already seen of course you've already seen, unless you're skipping through this video, which don't do that. Watch the whole thing. Magomed Ankalaev, these names, why do they all sound the same? Anyway, Magomed Ankalaev, I do think it's a done. I think the fact it's a 3-round fight does give Alexander Rakic a massive advantage. Not an advantage, but it just closed the gap between the two fighters significantly, in my opinion. Rakic has come out and said that apparently his legs were dead. He wasn't feeling the best in his last fight against Yuri Prohaska, and that's why he crumbled in the second. But he said he feels a lot better. 3-round fight. Very crisp striker. Very good leg kicks. Magomed Ankalaev himself has said that he has worked on his leg kicks. It's just another one of those cases of us just having to take the fighter's word for it, since we don't see their training camps and what they're prepared for. But I do think if there's anything that Ankalaev has improved on, it is his leg kick defense, because in that Blachowicz fight, that was the only thing that was really giving him trouble. Like, he was badly hurt by those leg kicks. Everywhere else, I thought he was doing pretty well. Was beating Blachowicz, was robbed in that fight. That shouldn't have been a draw. He clearly won that fight, in my opinion. Rakic will be going to the legs. The striking is very crisp with Rakic. They're really clean 1-2 down the middle. Ankalaev, though, is not a slouch as I think, and also another thing, I think Rakic's grappling is also quite good as well, if I just want to throw that out there. Not as good as Ankalaev, though. I think Ankalaev has the better grappling of the two. I think he'll be able to out-grapple Rakic. If that's where he wants to take the fight, he can take it there. I think his striking is also better than Rakic's. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. Rakic has extremely clean striking, but I think Ankalaev is more technical. He's a very, like, a really good striker. It's just that he's a bit boring. He's like kind of like Adesanya. Like, no one will here say Adesanya is not one of the best strikers to ever be in the sport of mixed martial arts. Just boring, though, sometimes, isn't he? Same with Ankalaev. He's just boring sometimes. Just throwing some leg kicks in a distance against Özdemir, and Santos caught him at one point. But Santos has power. He just doesn't have any legs left. Or any, like, ACL, which is completely torn off. But anyway, Magomed Ankalaev is going to be the pick. I think it'll be a 29-28 fight. I do think early on, Rakic will come out hot, fast, crisp, win the first round. I think Magomed Ankalaev will take over in the rounds 2 and 3. I think he'll overtake Rakic, build upon what he did in the first round, be able to counter some strikes himself, find the timing, catch Rakic. Not to, like, finish him, but, like, you know, stumble him around a bit, be able to mix in the takedowns. Round 3, it'll be 1-1 going to round 3. Round 3 will start. Ankalaev will strike with him for a little bit, and then just remind him that he can wrestle, and just go for a takedown here and there, control him against the fence, knee his thighs, potentially to get him to the ground, and Rakic is like scrambling to get against the cage, try to build up and get him back up on his feet. Won't be able to, or if he does, too much of the fight will have gone by, and I think Ankalaev will clearly win a 29-28 decision. The pick is Ankalaev, and as you can see, part of my multi. It's a shame Said fight got voided. I've only got 2 legs in my multi now. $125. Big money. Speaking of big money, Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker. I have already made a video on this fight, but let's get into it a little bit just here. Khamzat Chimaev is coming off of a year of not fighting. He's come back as a soy, glasses wearing, weird haircut. I don't want to go too much on people's appearances here, but the fact that Khamzat has come back in this new light, it just means that he has reevaluated a lot of things. He said he recently moved to a different training camp, which makes a lot of sense. Well, does it make sense? I mean, he was undefeated the last training camp he was at All Stars Gym in Sweden, and now he's gone to, like, the UAE. Weird. Maybe it's something to do with the relationship that he has with the dictator of the country that he's from, which is escaping me right now. Chechnya, you know. Whittaker, on the other hand, has fought twice this year already. Has looked really good outside of getting wheel kicked by Paulo Costa. Has looked really good. Was hurt in that fight, but he showed that he had a good chin. Thankfully, the round was ending. He survived, won the next 2 rounds, cleared the cobwebs. That gives me confidence that if Khamzat Chimaev catches him on the ground and just ground and pounds him, and he's hurt going to the 2nd or 3rd round, he'll be able to gain control, gain composure, bring it all back in, and go after Khamzat Chimaev. Whittaker wants to go after the head of Chimaev, which I really like. I don't like that these fighters sometimes are just like so hesitant with Khamzat Chimaev. You know what I mean? They're just like trembling in their boots, and then they're like, overhand. That's the first thing they do is overhand, and Khamzat immediately counters with a takedown. I think Robert Whittaker will be patient to start with. He will weather the storm of Khamzat Chimaev, but I do think he'll be going for Khamzat Chimaev's head. Khamzat Chimaev might even be panic takedown shooting, as in the 3rd and the 4th round after he's tired. I think Whittaker can capitalize on that, piece him up. The first round, I do think Khamzat Chimaev will win decisively. Like, everyone just pre-write your scorecards right now. Khamzat Chimaev 10-8 or 10-9 in the first round. Second round will be more competitive, but if it's a close round, they'll give it to Khamzat. They dropped Usman, so they might rob Whittaker, but I think round 3, 4, and 5 will be too decisive. Whittaker will piece him up. And the thing is, I would put more money on this fight if it was in happening in Miami or anywhere that isn't the Middle East, because I think if a fight is close in the Middle East, they'll just give it to the dude with the beard, right? Well, they both have beards, but the one with the full beard, like a full head of beard. Anyway, I do think Whittaker gets it done, though. I do think people are forgetting that he is one of the best middleweights on the planet. One of the best middleweights of all time. Top 3 ever, in my opinion. Like, come on. This is Robert Whittaker. I understand that he's got taken some losses. He's ranked number 3 now, which is seen as like a slide because he was like ranked number 1 for the longest period, just underneath Adesanya. But yeah, the big thing with Robert Whittaker, I just think he's more well-rounded. I just think he's better. Like, I think he will be taken down, but I do think his striking is just so much better than Usman. And Usman was beating Khamzat later into that fight. You know what I mean? Like, he was able to even out the odds, put more pressure on Khamzat, do all that. Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. Okay, so Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. I've also made a video on this fight. This is the fight I have the most money on. Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. I've said this already. Let's get into it. I do think Ilia Topuria has more power of the two. I think that's a given. Ilia Topuria is just rocking Josh Emmett around all over the place. Couldn't finish him though, but has finished a lot of people. Like, and people are saying that Ilia Topuria has not been tested yet. Like, if he doesn't have the dog in him, if he doesn't have the cardio, if he doesn't have this, that, whatnot, the chin. He has the chin. He was dropped by Jahaibert, immediately went for takedown, and then later on finished that fight by a knockout. He's not this scrub that hasn't been taken to deep waters. Like, he went 5 rounds with Josh Emmett. I know he was the hammer more than he was a nail in that fight, but he was hammering, you know, Josh Emmett pretty well. And if you're never the nail, that's not really a bad thing, right? Like, if you're just so good that you have never been on the losing side of a fight, like, you know, that's more power to you, honestly. Because he was able to not destroy, but he did KO. I mean, he destroyed Volkanovski's chin, let's be honest there. Destroyed his chin, beat Josh Emmett. Bryce Mitchell, who's a wrestler, primary wrestler, couldn't do anything with Ilia Topuria. Nothing. And he was able to control a lot of guys in that division. Dan Ige being one, Edson Barboza being the other. And Ilia Topuria, on the other hand, finished him. I don't think this fight will be going to the grappling in terms of Ilia having to defend takedowns, but I do think Ilia Topuria has the offensive wrestling advantage by a significant margin. I don't expect Max Holloway to shoot a single takedown in this entire fight. I think Ilia Topuria will be shooting the majority of the takedown. I think Max Holloway is going to be a little bit hesitant to throw his kicks, throw his spinning back kick, because I think the threat of Ilia Topuria just taking Max's back is just so great. Max will be centered. We'll be jabbing at him from range, you know, piecing him up. I think he'll win the first round, actually. I think Max Holloway will win the first round. I think a fresh Max Holloway will be able to really put the pace on Ilia Topuria. I think Ilia Topuria can keep up with him in the first round, and I do think he could do that. But I think much like the whole Volkanovski fight, I think he'll lose the first round. And I think, but he'll only build up from there. Like, it'll be like a snowball effect. Like, Ilia Topuria gets bigger and bigger as the fight will go on, which is crazy because Max Holloway is seen as the better cardio fighter in this scenario. But I think Ilia Topuria's power is just such a cheat code in the featherweight division. Like, the fact that he can grapple so well, have submission threats, and be able to strike the way he does. And let's not forget about his skill. He has some extremely underrated ability to close distances when in striking range. Look at Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett will lean back in that fight, not wanting to get caught by Ilia Topuria, and he would just close the gap so easily. Look at the way he closed the gap against Volkanovski. I understand Volkanovski, honestly, that fight was, when he was KO'd, his feet were in the wrong position as he was backing off. Wasn't in the best position to defend himself, and he was caught, but I think Max will do better in terms of his footwork. But look at who Max has lost to in the past. Volkanovski, a shorter dude, more powerful than Max, and much faster than Max. Just a really good athlete. Got pieced up. The only concern here is if Ilia Topuria's cardio is going to hold up at that high of a pace when he's fighting someone like Max Holloway. And I think it will. I just think Ilia Topuria has trained too hard for this fight to not be going on sprints every morning. You know what I mean? Like, if it all comes down to it, I think his cardio will last. And even if he gets more tired, he has the nuclear weapon in his hands, the power. Let's be honest here, like, you don't have to out-volume someone to win fights. Like, that's not how you win fights. You win fights by doing damage or threatening with submissions. Max Holloway is worse at both those things than Ilia Topuria. Just think about that. No hate, I'm not being biased. If Max Holloway is your favorite fighter, more power to you. I can't lie and say I think he's going to win just because of volume striking. I think there's a power difference here. I think Ilia Topuria will go to that power difference. I think Max Holloway will be able to evade a lot of these shots, by the way. I'm not saying Max Holloway is a scrub, but Ilia Topuria's skill as a striker is really good. Like, it's really high level. The way his timing on his hands, like, the way he moves his head, everything about him is just high level. Max Holloway, very high level, just doesn't have that power. And I think Ilia Topuria doesn't have that volume, don't get me wrong. But he has the skill, the power, the precision, the grappling, the jiu-jitsu. Come on. Get on the hype train or get off the tracks. It's like I've been saying. The Blessed Express, I think, does get derailed here. Not derailed. Just takes a different path. Instead of being a 145 division, instead of leading to the 145 division like it has for the past decade, I think it just takes a slight detour to the 155 division and he gets a fight against anyone in the top 5. Because Max Holloway is an awesome fighter and he's a massive star. And I think Ilia Topuria it's just how it is, isn't it? Like, eventually someone better comes along. Maybe not because they're better than your peak, but Max Holloway, like, you're taking a lot of damage, man. Like, your scar tissue, like, you'll get busted up. That's it. The pick will be Ilia Topuria. I've already made a video on this. Not going to get too into it, but yeah, that's that. I'm on 70 subscribers. Get me to 80, guys. Let's just do it. And like this video as well. I will be streaming UFC 308, so tune into that. I'll see you guys next time.